the immediate past president for UCLA Staff Assembly. And so just for today's, for some quick ground rules before we get started, in case you guys need to use the restroom, they're behind the curtains and the hallway closer to the elevator. And it's to the left, or my left right now. So that way. And then other ground rules is later when we do presentations, we have 4 presentations today from the 4 task forces. So each of them are going to present for about 10 minutes, and we're going to have 5 minutes of Q&A. So then we're going to run around with the mics. If you guys have questions and suggestions, input, feel free to share that as well. And then so we're going to get started right now. And thank you. And we're also recording on Zoom, by the way. So Zoom is our virtual, kind of like Skype to online presentation, online meeting. So we are recording. So then if, please keep the chatter to the minimum because it'll pick up, we have a mic over there that's picking up all the voices, so it might pick up your conversation. So if you don't want to have conversations, you don't want people to record it or heard, just make sure that, just to let, you've been forewarned. Okay. All right, so go ahead. So here's the quick agenda for today. Oh, I have the clicker. Sorry. I'm new to this, sorry. First of all, welcome to our space at, oh, maybe the clicker is being blocked. So I might need you to help click throughout because I think it's behind a lot of things. Oh. Maybe it just has too many clickers. I want to just use the wireless mouse. Okay. Oh, this is just frozen. All right. So once again, here's a quick presentation, quick agenda. Luby Levin is going to give some quick introductory remarks, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of the survey because it was last taken in 2017, so it's a couple of years now. And then we're going to have each of the task forces present, and then Kevin, our current president, is going to give some closing remarks, and then we're going to have open networking time for everyone. All right? And then just a reminder, the task forces today are being co-sponsored by Administrative Vice Chancellor Michael Beck. He actually had another conflict, but he's planning to stop by the last 45 minutes. And then Luby Levin, and then myself when I was president last year. So the Staff Assembly is also co-sponsor of the task forces and the recommendations they're making. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Luby to say a few words.
Thank you, Wallen. It's a pleasure to see all of you here this afternoon. Thank you for coming. I'm very excited and looking forward to the task force presentations. I really want to thank all of them for doing such a great job. We selected some really challenging topics, as you know, that go really far into what we would like to do to create the best possible working environment for our staff as well as faculty and students at UCLA. So you'll remember there was a survey in 2017, which is a system-wide survey of our policy-covered staff. The survey is commissioned jointly by the System-Wide Council of UC Staff Assemblies, including all the campuses, and the Office of the President. And every year what we try to do, those surveys, I think this will be the 5th one coming up. The 4th, okay, sorry. And every 2 years, we try to see what improvements we have made by gauging staff perspectives and selecting a random sample, which is selected by an outside consultant of staff, and asking their opinions on a wide range of topics. So the topics you'll see in a moment are really critical for us in human resources. And I want to thank all of you as well as our Staff Assembly leadership for making it possible to have this session. Wallen has done an outstanding job. He is one of the most enthusiastic people I've ever worked with in my entire life. So we're very fortunate to have him. And I also want to acknowledge and thank our Staff Assembly leadership for this year, Kevin Baldwin, who's our president this year. Closing up, I think we have another couple of months. Also doing a fabulous job. And Lucy Teng, I don't know if Lucy's here this afternoon, but she's our incoming president for the coming year. So the survey that's coming out actually in about a week, please watch for it. Some of you may get invitations to respond to the questions, and there's a baseline of subject areas that we trace from year to year to make sure we know what issues are most important to staff, where we need to make improvements, and what issues we can follow up on at the campus level. Some of you may have noticed that the themes we've selected for these special task forces cut across some really important subject areas: performance management, for example, change management, working relationships, and we have the theme of diversity that cuts across all of these categories. So I want to thank all of you who have worked on the task force presentations. I always learn a lot from being here, and I look forward to having your questions and comments. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Libby. Libby's been a long time sponsor of Staff Assembly as well, so we thank her for her support. All right. So very quickly, these were the different categories that were part of the survey. There's like 36 questions, I believe, in the survey, and these were the 10 categories that they came up with. And then from the last survey, these were the areas, the 4 areas we identified after reviewing the survey results with Libby and her team, and then with our leadership. We basically identified these 4 areas as the main areas we want to focus on, that we considered either what's one of the lowest scoring or also the greatest room for improvement for us, for UCLA staff. And then, as you can see earlier, I showed working relationships. You're wondering why we probably chose that, but actually it's part of the key drivers of engagement that's been identified for us through Willis Towers Watson. And then why engagement of staff is important is because this was actually a result of all the survey questions. It identified based on weighting of the questions that only 31% of our staff are highly engaged. So we have an opportunity to get the staff that feels unsupported, detached, or disengaged, to get them to that level. So that's what we want to focus on. This is one key thing that Administrative Vice Chancellor Michael Beck keyed in on from the report. And he feels that if we can increase this, we can definitely see higher productivity from staff and just higher staff satisfaction and employee morale across the board. So then this is a quick timeline of how we progressed from a couple of years ago when we first conducted the survey. Obviously, it was conducted back in April and May of 2017. We didn't get the results till September, and then we reviewed it with our leadership and CHR's leadership. And then in January to March of 2018, we went on a little road show, presented this at different meetings, HCI steering committee meeting, and then at the Dean's Council meeting and the meetings amongst the vice chancellors and the deans as well. So we definitely had a chance to share this with a lot of leadership and just share. And then afterwards, we decided to do something new and then form task forces to address these issues. Because before, I think we were expecting both Staff Assembly and Campus Human Resources to really carry the load. And we realized we have, one thing I learned is, I think to quote Ria Turtletop at another meeting I was at, Vice Chancellor Ria Turtletop, she said, we have an abundance of talent here at UCLA and it's never ceases to amaze her. And same for me, it's ever since I've been in this role working at Staff Assembly. So I think I wanted to tap into that. I know we have all these great programs, PDP, MSAP, and all these development programs. So we wanted to utilize the great staff that we have working at UCLA and help us tackle some of these issues. So we created the work task forces. I can't be any more proud than these 4 task force groups has been formed. They actually there's 34 individuals representing about 22 different departments. So it's really a cross-section of UCLA that's worked on this and provide their input. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Career Development to start first.
Thank you, Wallen. My name is Erica Fujitani. I'm one of the co-leads for the Career Development Task Force, and I'll be presenting along with Anna Rodriguez and Lana LaBeouf, the other two co-leads. I also just want to take a moment to thank the rest of our team and recognize them. Most of them are actually here today. Andres Askenas, Peter Dominguez, David Zvonek, Miranda Say, and Mark Leong. All of us have worked together this year on this last task force, and we're ready to present our results to you guys today. So we'll be starting off with our research and findings and then moving on to our recommendations and our conclusions. Starting with Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending. I'm so glad to just present a little, oops, let me go back one. No, this is it. I'm sorry. Sorry. You should have gotten a one sheet for our statistical data and why we came up with the recommendations that we came up with. As you can see at the very top, career development is the score of 60, which is all right, not so great. But if we take a look at the directors and above, we can see that the directors and above are highly desirable. So they have a high number versus the individual contributors as a -4. So we wanted to take this information from the staff engagement survey and break it down even more to what the questions related to the career development. If we can go to the next slide. I wanted to point out where the statistical differences are. So if you look at question number 7, you also have the handout. There's sufficient opportunities for me to receive training to improve my skills in my current job. Number 11, I believe I have the opportunity to personal development and growth within the UC system. And number 23, I'm confident I can achieve my personal and career objectives within the UC system. So I want to just point out, those are some of the statistical differences. Those are the darker reds, and the darker greens would be the statistical difference. But you can see the negative versus the positive, where individual contributors land. We kind of made the assumption that perhaps maybe the individual contributors don't know the breadth of resources that are available that Wallen spoke about. I specifically want to talk about, though, the lowest score, 36. My campus location is doing a good job of planning for management succession. So how are we planning for our management succession? This is clearly tied with career development and engaging the staff. How do we engage our staff so that way we can be prepared for the future? We also want to tie into the next slide, which is on the diversity and inclusion. And again, when we looked at the data, we saw that there's a clear difference between those who are making more than $80,000 and those that are making less than $80,000. So I think it further reinforces that the individual contributor may not know the information that's available. And what we wanted to do is give some ideas how we can engage our staff. And we made 3 recommendations that I'm going to hand over to La'ana. So if we can take a look at the next one, we have management engagement, career mobility toolkits, and she'll speak a little bit more about that, and a career fair.
Thank you, Anna. As Anna mentioned, having engagement across all of our team members is very important, but that also stems and is contributed based on manager engagement. So when we looked at our recommendations, we actually recommended a 3-pronged approach. There we go, 3-pronged approach, with the first being the manager engagement. So the goal with that is we have 3 deliverables through building that engagement. The first deliverable is it's our hope that we're able to centralize communication so that the resources across all managers can be leveraged for the benefit of the individual team member and their respective UCLA departments. The second is to build an inventory of not only UCLA resources and information, but also integrate that into what's available through the Office of the President as well, so that we streamline and we sort of shorten the period of time for managers and team members to be able to navigate with what resources are available. The next is to also integrate a career conversation plan. And so it's not only about when team members come in and staff members coming in, really getting an idea of what their career goals are, but integrating that into the performance review process as it should be in the intended meaning of that. The second prong approach, as you can see, is to build a career mobility toolkit. And we had two deliverables, and our primary audience is not only the managers and supervisors, but also the individual team members. Team members that are interested in upward mobility and overall career growth across the UCLA campus, but also for managers and supervisors as well to engage them in that process and therefore engage the individual contributor. The third prong approach is to deploy a career fair. And when we reference a career fair, we're really talking about a non-traditional approach and really centralizing that to the UCLA community so two things can happen. One is that UCLA departments have an opportunity to showcase current positions and future positions that are opened, but also it gives an opportunity for UCLA organizations and CHR organizations, specifically CHR and campus associations and networking groups, to promote not only participation, but cross-collaboration and communication so that we can leverage those resources and really the power of the individual team member across UCLA campus. With that, yes. So the wonderful thing about these recommendations, and we were proud to say, is that they were in alignment with several strategic plans. One, the strategic plan of the campus overall. Second, the strategic plan of UCLA administration. And so one of those being, we took sound bites just to visually depict that. Particularly, we start with excellence within the True Blue values. And through being intentional with our professional development and engagement approach, it's our goal that we go into it with intentionality and expecting the best, but also providing the best resources so that our team members, which includes individual contributors and managers, can excel. And as a result, the individual campus benefits from that, and also the Office of the President, meaning the entity of all UCs combined. Also, you'll see the UCLA Administrative Strategic Initiative. We're able to, and we hope to be able to successfully do that through these recommendations, because we are, again, being intentional about training and development opportunities, but not just the opportunities themselves. But the goal is to develop opportunities, even if that means expanding within your career job, just through collaboration and networking. Also, it was mentioned, Luby mentioned how diversity is a common thread across all these task forces. And one of the things that we do with that communication allows to do, is that you're more inclusive of the overall UCLA environment by bringing everyone's input to the table. And so we hope to be able to achieve that and support that a high-performing workforce. I'll turn it over to Erica.
Thank you. All right, so just to conclude our presentation, we just wanted to reiterate that career development starts with you, and that means it starts with you, the individual. It starts with you, the leadership. We really feel that it's important that it's a joint effort and that it's not just by one person, but that there's a support offered by the leadership. One of the things that we can say at the university is if we're able to assemble all of these resources for our employees and for leadership to have access to, then we can help save the university anywhere from 20 to 50% of an annual salary for an entry-level employee, all the way up towards 200% of an annual salary for a senior or executive level employee. So if we're able to save the university these resources, then we can use that towards other things like training our own staff. So as Lana and Anna have mentioned, we have 3 phases in our approach. So our recommendation is to start with phase 1, to start with manager engagement. And so if we are able to bring a group of people together comprised of both people who work in this field and people who are invested in the cause, then we can form a committee of people from every department to represent what their departments are doing and help bring this information and share it with one another. From there, we can work on creating the career mobility toolkits. Our target is going to be for fall 2019, so that way we can have the resources available for all the employees and for the managers. And then the third is the career fair, which we're hoping to culminate in spring 2020. And this will be so that once the employees have gotten the engagement and have access to the information, then they can now attend this career fair using all the tools that they've assembled. And so in a way to measure all of this information, we're hoping to be able to pull the data on how much retention rates have had for the last 3 to 5 years or even beyond if possible, and then compare that against what happens after this year of planning and executing this recommendation. Once we're able to do that, then we can review and see if this has been effective, and then we can also use our other metrics such as page views and downloads of the Career Mobility Toolkit, and also attendance and feedback from the career fair, and use that to help guide us for the moving forward. And then our future is that in the end of all this, hopefully that we're able to continue to sustain this and use the feedback to improve, and then also to possibly have some job shadowing options in the future. And that job shadowing would hopefully allow departments to share and have shadowing in between different departments so that they can get exposure to a department before making that commitment of leaving to a new, completely new role. So that's our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
You mentioned retention on the last slide as one of your KPIs. Would then the corollary be that a better career path would mean better staff retention? How are you able to know whether having a better career path is actually what is retaining staff?
So our hope is that in getting this information, we can compare the years of service. So employees that may have left the university at whatever point versus before all of this is available versus after. So that hopefully in going through these steps that they're able to get more resources, and rather than seeking jobs outside of the university, that they can look for jobs in other opportunities within campus.
Right, but how do you know that it's the career pathing that was the thing that retained them? I'm just wondering what mechanism you're able to do to clarify that it was that and not something else that the university may have also provided at the same time.
Yeah. So that's the difficulty, because the data, it's very hard to pull that to that level of detail. So as a start, we'd like to see, are we losing or gaining more people before or after, because we want to see if the trends are changing after this and if this is worth continuing. If there's no change, then maybe we should be going in a different direction. But hopefully the hope is that this is going to be successful and that more people will want to stay with the university.
In addition to that, something else that our group discussed when we were identifying those KPIs is, because there are so many variables, the goal is that these KPIs will at least give us a jump start to start targeting some areas to look at. And then from there, as more data becomes available, hopefully reestablish additional sub KPIs so that we can be able to narrow down. Because again, like you said, there can be many other variables that play a role into that.
Any other questions? Right. So I just wanted to say in the beginning, I accidentally forgot to mention Paris McDonald. She's been with us from the beginning. She's also on our team. So I just wanted to thank her, and also for Wallen and for Megan for your help this last year with all of our questions. So thank you.
Good job. Career development, they had a tough topic, probably a really big one. I probably attended their meetings the most. So I like to say, I think I'm an honorary member of their team. So next, we'd like to bring up Organizational Change Task Force. They actually took to heart to come up with a nickname for a team, so they call themselves Transformers as well. And yeah, they definitely have one of the most important topics, I think, with so many changes going on at UCLA, from MFA to the Ascend project coming out, UCPath. You all know all the changes that are coming through. So here, I'll throw it over to him.
I'm assuming you're going to be managing. All right, great. Ray Soto, Department of Epidemiology, along with Don Hong from Ash Center. So for organizational change, what we were looking at is, well, the name is a little misleading. We're looking at the communication of information from UC to UCLA. what we're looking at is, well, I'm going to use UC Path because it's most fresh in our minds. So when UC Path comes out, how well was it planned? How well was it explained? How well was it executed? So the numbers, a third of us felt it was good, but that means 70% of us didn't. That's a problem, right? And so as we were looking at and evaluating why this was, we came up with 3 barriers that kind of fed and impeded the progress of communication. UCLA is not standardized. We're all siloed, and we all focus on a top-down communication process, which means from the law school to athletics to Anderson, health, all the way down to here to extensions, nobody's doing anything the same way. If UC Path comes out and that information comes out, it should be going to everyone at the same time by the same source using the same information. And that's not happening. So the standardization isn't there. Siloed, everyone's doing their own thing. Law school's doing their own thing, Anderson's doing their own thing, athletics is doing their own, everybody at the university is doing their own thing. So nobody's sharing, which means nobody's evaluating lessons learned. So nobody's learning from anybody else's mistakes and everybody's making the same mistakes. And then the top-down communications, this was addressed by our previous colleagues here. Everything's going from the top down. Managers are just shooting out information, but they're not getting information back from their constituents. They're not getting back anything from their employees. So they're not asking questions. Did you actually understand what UC Path is doing? Do you have any questions for me so that I can then take it up to our administrators and get your answers, because I don't understand it either. So the questions aren't being asked of our frontline staff. And so these 3 barriers have contributed, we believe, to the low rates that we're looking at. So Don is going to explain to you our 3, what we figured out what we needed to do.
Thank you. So as part of our research to identify the recommendations for UCLA leadership, we were able to, we went through a business transformation model canvas exercise. We also met with Rochelle Jackson, who is a consultant from the Business Transformation Office at UCLA. And we came up with 3 recommendations. So the first one is to create an organizational change toolkit, which will provide concrete steps and processes for managers and staff to communicate more effectively. And also, like Ray was saying about communication top-down, so we also recommending the boomerang communication method, which means to when you are sending a received message, you would have a timeline to how you send it back to your employees and then receive feedback from them. So it's really helped to provide manager a framework of how to communicate effectively and also promote bi-directional communication and not just top-down. So another one that we also recommend is to have an online course for manager and supervisor to focus on effective communication. And we understand that sometimes it can be daunting to find the resources at UCLA, so we think that we suggest that MyUCLA would be a portal that we house this toolkit for everybody to access this and also easily know where it is. And our second, next. So this is just a diagram of our boomerang method. So I say it's coming from the top and then you get the feedback in a timely manner as well. So then the communication flowing both ways. Next one is the second recommendation we have is to promote standardization of communication. And we were able to identify a potential quick win here is to on the deans and the director of communication list to our staff. When we were doing these meetings and talking among ourselves, we learned that some of us received the messages because you were part of the dean and the director's group. However, the message was really related and contained to our staff, but some of us we did not receive at all. So we think that would be a really easy, quick win to have it for our staff. And then another recommendation we have is to identify organizations to be accountable for ongoing development of effective communication and organizational change practices. So AMG can be one, Staff Assembly, and obviously CHR as well. And our last recommendation for the second recommendation is to having an opt-out strategy for emailing lists. So with new employee coming on at UCLA, you should, as part of the onboarding process, we should have the new employee to automatically be registered to our mailing list. For example, if I am a new employee coming into UCLA, I should already be included as part of Staff Assembly and AMG. And so that would really leave the responsibility to the employee to take ownership of whether they want to retain this information, they want to participate more, or they have the option to opt out. But like I said earlier, there are so many resources. We're so rich in resource, but then we don't have a central place for all our staff to figure out where are the resources. So by giving the option to opt out, that we are providing the employees a resource, and it's really up to them how to take actions on those. And last but not least is our third recommendation to develop a standing organizational change committee. So during our meeting, we really asked what's next for Transformers after we're done with this, task force, after we submit our report. And, we want to make sure that all our recommendations will be implementing, taking into actions, and we think that with the collaborative sponsorship of AMG, Staff Assembly, BTO, or CHR, this committee really helped to review and prioritize our recommendations along with recommendations of the 3 other task forces to making sure that we are taking actions and act on them. And we really think this will really promote a culture of adaptability and also accountability at UCLA. So we know that it's very daunting. We have a lot of complexity within our recommendations. And so we suggesting that, so we broke this down to 4 different stages, and the duration is the 6 months per stage. We really broke it down to like single easy action item, from easy quick win to complex issues based on our 3 recommendations. And we believe that if we are doing this in the next 2 years, by the 2021 employee engagement survey out, you will be able to see an improvement in our total favorable score.
So with that, I'd like to ask our team to stand and be recognized here. Let me see the name here. Thank you. Jesse, who is our co-sponsor, isn't here. We have Lisa Kim Jones, our other co-sponsor, Cecily Brown, Constance Dano? Sorry. Non-Ong, Kumar, who just likes to use Kumar. Nobody knows his real name. Kristen Mukai, Cynthia Holloway, myself, and our one missing member, Jennifer, who wasn't able to join us. So with that, we conclude. Any questions? Wow, we really answered all your questions. That's great. So we're expecting good turnout for the next survey then. Yes.
Affairs at the David Giffen School of Medicine. Just kind of curious, like what type of information, like different categories and just some examples that you would want to house on this nice UCLA toolkit. I'm just very curious because we're struggling with disseminating information in the medical school to new employees, and I'm almost 2 years old here, so I'm still pretty young and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Toolkit would be based on for managers. It's more like a manager toolkit of how to manage communications. So that way nothing gets missed. So it would be anything. If it's just an event for your department, great. But if it's something that's coming out from the UC, that's even better because that's what our numbers are showing, right? So this toolkit will show managers, hey, you're getting this information. Don't dumb it down. Don't do anything with it. You got it. Send it to your people. But don't just stop there. Get information back so they understand what it is that they're getting. Don't just leave them be and ignore them, because a lot of people don't ask questions and then they're just running around, well, I didn't know that, or they wait till the last minute for deadlines and things get failed, right? Things fail, things fall apart. And so the communication process fails because there is no down-up communication. And so the toolkit, that's part of it. And so it really is, how do we communicate with our people up and down to get information put out? Yes.
Have you considered where you're going to put the toolkit? Are you going to put it on the staff landing page? Are you going to put it in the new employee hire? Have you thought about partnering with the other groups to make it part of the onboarding process or the employee training process? I'm not sure how they're going to access it so that they can, and it's overwhelming. There's so much information on campus that it really takes a long, long time to digest it. But just listening to your robust presentation, and I was so engaged, I thought, why couldn't you partner with the other groups and have it be part of like a computer, and it's on a computer, and when every person goes to new employee orientation, out pops your toolkit, and it's web enabled, and just log on and join, participate with, or at least have access, the overwhelming in front of the fire hydrant kind of access.
Yes, to every single one of your questions. We had great conversations and debates as to where this thing should live, who should own it, who should manage it. And what came out was, this is too big for us. We're going to make the recommendation, leave it up to Beck, leave it up to Ruby, leave it up to whoever has the authority and the power to say, this is where it should be. We discussed putting it on UC Path because everybody has to go on there. So a link on UC Path, there you go. You click on it and you get the toolkit. We also discussed putting it on the training thing that UCLA has. We discussed creating a whole new platform for it, putting on Staff Assembly, on AMG, right? So we had all those conversations, but it came out, it's too big for us. We're only being asked to do this, and we only have this short period of time. We certainly could have taken it on, but it would have taken quite a long time and a lot more resources. So yes, we did. Those were all the same questions we had. And with due diligence, right? Because you had them, and I'm sure other people have had the same questions, but yeah, we addressed it.
Recommendation that my UCLA can be a place for, like houses toolkits as well, because that's something that all staff can be accessed to my UCLA portal.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure if it really fits within the framework that you're talking to right now. It may be down the line, I'm not sure. But on the most micro level, when you're talking about this toolkit and how it affects everyone in different departments and everything, when you're talking about the employee to supervisor level, where is the priority for performance evaluations where the supervisor can, let the employee know what the expectations are, properly acknowledge what they have done, what they may need help in, and then get feedback from that employee. I need help in this area. I want to expand here, and then build up from there. I'm not sure, again, if this fits where you are right now in the presentation or if it's part of it or not.
Again, yes to all your questions, but I think our next group is going to actually be addressing that.
So actually, thank you. Thank you to our organizational change group. They had a pretty important topic, and then it was a nice segue for your question. So hopefully our next group will be able to answer your question. They probably have the most difficult and most unpopular topic of performance management. So I'd like to bring them up right now. Mike Flaxman. Mike actually just joined us at Extension, so our very own Extension employee, and Barbara Ramos.
Hi, everyone.
My name is Barbara Ramos. I'm with the Asian American Studies Center. I'm co-presenting today with Mike Flaxman of Extension. Mike was actually co-lead of our group along with former staff Teresa Miller. Our group also consisted of Leah Brown, Yadira Kano, and Maria Dutilio is here. So our task force looks specifically at 3 results under performance management. 1, I feel my campus location does a good job matching my pay to performance. 2, my supervisor effectively deals with poor performers. And finally, my supervisor does a good job of building teamwork. Overall, these scores revealed performance management was one of the most improved areas of the 10 categories studied. But as you can see, they still fall below the national norm, revealing more work needs to be done across the UCs. So our task force focused on 2 recommendations to improve employee-supervisor relationships and employee experience system-wide. 1 is quarterly check-ins, and the second is mandatory supervisor training. So I'll first talk about quarterly check-ins. We're recommending quarterly check-ins to be part of the UCLA's performance management practices. Sorry, can't really see where we are. So currently, campus-wide, we engage in the practice of annual performance reviews. However, studies have shown that this practice has its faults. For managers, this is the second most disliked work activity, second only to firing employees. 86% of employees are unhappy with these systems, and less than 10% of human resource executives believe that these systems made a significant impact on employee performance. Additionally, they're often limited in scope and do not reflect current goal cycles or the pace of the workload. So we need to ask ourselves, do annual performance reviews actually reflect the work and the projects we do and the goals of our units and the university? I think for the most part, we'd be hard-pressed to say that they're perfectly aligned. So this means that we need to and can do better than an annual performance review. So how can we do better? According to UCLA Campus Human Resources, for effective performance management, the following components are needed. Set expectations and standards, then observation and tracking, feedback and coaching, appraisal and development plan, and then it goes back again into a continuous cycle. These are all components that are widely accepted and lauded industry-wide. Unfortunately, these components aren't always reflected comprehensively or neatly in our current practice of the annual performance review. Too often we have the danger of we lose a part of the process, or we don't spend enough time within a different section, say like the coaching part. So for many companies now, they've recognized the limitations of performance reviews and started to shift and improve their systems, better engage their workforce into movements towards like 360 and making the process more online and simplifying it. There's a focus on these new rules that are reflected in our executive summary that's not here, but other people see it. And for instance, these new rules, it's a shift from once a year towards more frequent and regular meetings. It's making goals more public and transparent. And managers now shift from just evaluating performance, but also coaching and developing their employees. There are new industry best practices, Google, Microsoft, Deloitte. They've all evolved their performance management and utilize quarterly check-ins to better develop and retain their employees to positive success. For instance, 90% of companies that have redesigned performance management see direct improvements in engagement, 96% of the processes are simpler, 83% see the quality of conversations between employees and managers going up. At UC Irvine, actually, they implemented Achieve in 2017, which uses quarterly check-ins instead of doing an annual performance review. It's also online, and it's much simpler than our current annual performance review forms. And these practices are eroding at ways that annual performance reviews fail and find better ways of engaging employees. So for our quarterly check-ins, we want to implement a mandatory system in which supervisors meet in person with employees 3 times per year, increasing to 4 times. And this helps keep the cycle going that we mentioned earlier, and engage in a value-added continual dialogue that focuses on goal setting and tracking and developmental feedback. And we use an approach aimed at identifying and enhancing the skills and capabilities of employees that will inevitably build upon employee satisfaction by helping them grow themselves. So why do quarterly check-ins make sense? They're developmental dialogues. So it's a positive process oriented towards development and performance coaching. It's team-oriented, strengthens the supervisor-employee relationship. There's improved effectiveness because both the supervisor and the employee are better informed about what is expected of them and what they also need to do their job better. It's adaptable, responsive, and ongoing. So there's clarity, there's focus on performance and consequences. It focuses on strategic viewpoints, continually promoting alignment between the organization's goals, supervisor expectations, and employee output. And it's efficient because it's a simplified process that's spread out throughout the year, reducing time and energy spent on the annual ratings process. In our executive summary, we shared recommendations for how to implement the check-ins, and in particular, we recommended looking to peers and seeing what is working. Some units already employ a form of quarterly check-ins like the Luskin Conference Center or OIT to some positive feedback. And to further our improvements in performance management, and in order to maximize the effectiveness of these quarterly check-ins, Mike will now talk about mandatory supervisor training.
Thank you, Barbara. So like she said, our second recommendation is for new supervisors to complete a set of required trainings within 6 months of being appointed into a supervisory role. The HR Professionals magazine says frontline managers can have the single largest impact on your organization. A good or bad manager affects employee performance and satisfaction, productivity, turnover, and the overall health of any organization. Unified trainings that prioritize employee development and managing performance will give supervisors the skills to encourage and support our employees to perform their best. And by making these trainings mandatory, we ensure that supervisors access this knowledge base early and often throughout their career. We researched several institutions with mandatory training, and for example, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services believes mandatory training is fundamental to the strategic development of all supervisors and is essential for them to perform their responsibilities. And USC has a required 6-month management essentials program for their new managers. Many of the core concepts we recommend are offered through Campus Human Resources Supervisory Development Programs. However, we would like this mandatory program to focus on core competencies like hiring and developing others, giving feedback, goal setting and tracking performance, managing conflict, and inclusion in diversity training for supervisors. Working in HR, I understand how challenging it would be to facilitate all of these courses in person. So we recommend that coursework can be completed online via a learning management system, with the exception of the course on managing conflict, because we think it's critical that new supervisors have the opportunity to develop these skills in person. And to measure the effectiveness of our initiatives, we can look at results from things like employee satisfaction surveys, as well as other metrics like employee turnover. We really do believe that training our supervisors does make a difference. And as we begin to implement these programs, we'll see a positive change. I would also like to thank the efforts of Vice Chancellor Beck, who took our supervisor training recommendations into consideration. When our team presented to his leadership team, he has since implemented supervisory training programs for staff within UCLA administration. So thank you all. We appreciate it. Let us know if there are any questions. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to add an additional comment to what Mike just said. A couple of days after the task force presented this to Michael Beck and his management team, we all jointly adopted a requirement for managers and supervisors in administration to take the online people management courses. And so we're all doing that currently. We have 2 months left to complete it. I am hoping we'll be able to use that experience to come back to the other parts of the campus and recommend the same thing. If any of you are serving in a supervisory or management role, please do go online in the LMS and take a look at the coursework. What's added to it, in addition to the basic skills of doing performance management and other aspects of human resource management, is also the series of classes on unconscious bias. And there are very, very helpful modules there for people to take. So I would encourage you all, if you're interested in this area, to talk to others in your department. I'd like to start a little bit of an evolutionary process to make these tools available, because I think it's excellent. I think it will help managers, and I think it will be very positive for employees. So I wanted to recommend that, and also thank the task force for your ideas.
Thank you.
The question is, what was it called in the LMS?
The learning management system. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the people management series. Yeah. And it's equivalent to the in-person supervisory series.
Hello, I'm Mike Harbour. My name's Scott. Thank you for the presentation, both this one and the one before this. I'm a web developer, so you would think I would like online classes, but a lot of this has to do with trust and communications. And that really happens when I can see people's faces. Have you thought about a year from now looking at a way to have in-person trainings? I know it's so difficult and expensive, but if we were going to really deal with some change, I think if the stat of 58% of all employees don't trust their supervisors, having a supervisor go through online training, which I know is treated cynically, how do we get beyond that challenge? And I want to be part of how to solve this. I know it's hard to get an answer, and I know you guys have been working at it for a long time, but it's kind of the what will happen after we run into some challenges with this, if we have space for change.
I think we have a ringer in here.
Hi, perfect timing. My name is Regina Mathis. I'm the lead manager of training and development here at UCLA, and actually our team is exploring blended learning. So what we're thinking in the next year, and we're going through planning right now for what we're going to be offering over the next year or so, is to have people visit the e-courses, but then follow up with some guided discussions or facilitated discussions, because we agree there's some real value in that face-to-face interaction and being able to test out the conversations and things like that. So we believe that e-learning isn't quite enough.
And one of the things that we talked about was a train-the-trainer sort of approach, meaning that there's lots of skilled professionals throughout the university that may have the skills to facilitate those in-person trainings. So down the road, as we can learn the curriculum and learn those best practices, that could be something certainly implemented. We were also just thinking about resources and having to train hundreds of employees, a year or something to that effect. So ideally, we would love to do those in person, and I'm glad Regina's looking into the blended learning.
Hi, my name is Bella and I work for Extension. My question is there some way the university can implement a systematic mentorship program? Because I think having people maybe volunteer to mentor in certain areas, and then people who need that mentoring, some way of matching people with university-wide. I know in our department we've implemented that mentorship system, and it has given, provided a lot of support. And it's not the supervisors who are doing most of the mentoring. So here's the question.
Hi, my name is Megan Eigenbrod. I'm part of the Campus Human Resources Training and Development. There are a couple mentor programs to be aware of. One's the professional development program through Campus Human Resources that has a mentoring component. But also AMG has a really great program called ProShare Live, and so a select group based on a lottery is put together. It's pretty informal, but you get an opportunity to mentor, kind of have cross-mentoring and get to know different areas on campus. The Housing and Hospitality Department also has a mentoring program, and there's ACE also, so Advising Communities of Excellence has a mentoring program component. And then actually this year, part of our professional development program projects that are happening is they're looking into possibly setting up a mentoring program with emeriti, retirees, and retired faculty. So as another opportunity, looking at across the board how that might work out. So just wanted to mention a few that exist and some that might be in the works.
Another question?
I had less of a question and more of a suggestion as part of this. Maybe talking to managers and also with IT to create a career trajectory projection, where if you're in this position, you could see what potentially your next progression steps would be, because I'm new here and I wouldn't know what my next progression step would be. So maybe people don't try to go for another position because they're is this, within something that the scope of what I could actually achieve? So potentially.
Watch, in terms of the suggestion just made, watch for career tracks. If you haven't heard about that yet, that's specifically designed as a classification system by different functional areas. If you're in finance, if you're in HR, if you're in other fields, it's actually able to identify more clearly what your next position might look like in your field. So that will help a lot. So we'll have more information on that soon.
Career tracks. Career tracks.
Okay, thank you for the suggestions.
One more.
Thank you again for
one more. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Rhonda Super from the library. Has there been any discussion about having employees evaluate their managers? Because that is something we definitely need.
Sure.
I don't laugh.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. Regina's, our training and development group, which Regina leads, has a 360 tool that many of the departments on campus are interested in using. So that's definitely available. If that's something that you're interested in, please do talk about it with your leadership, because we can facilitate use of that tool.
There is no communication. It's believed now. They don't even know. Unless we don't know.
Yeah.
Pardon? There's the entire environment. We can't, the reputation of our library is gone down nationwide. We can't have successful job searches for librarians.
Well,
I was fortunate enough to be able to have breakfast with the chancellor a couple weeks ago, and I raised this question about the grand challenge on depression. And it seems like there's, from north to south campus, there's a lot of mental health issues. And we're hoping to try to bring a way to provide some mental health services for people in a way that's safe, that's accessible.
All of them are suffering from PTSD, where they're having tics, and their shirts can't stay on their back, but it's going like this one. Spasms, people don't sleep at night, they're drinking, it's disgusting.
Thank you for sharing. I don't have the answers, but I know we've got to try to find a way to help people.
In that situation, I would strongly recommend, if people are willing to come forward and talk with our Staff and Faculty Counseling Center. They have a lot of opportunities to assist, and we take these concerns very seriously and would want to help. So that's one suggestion. Yes.
Thank you for your suggestion. And yeah, I didn't mean to make light of the situation. I think in 360 is important. It's just that it's really costly. I did it myself, and I think it's really important to know where you're coming from. So I advise the supervisors if you could take the training that CHR has to get the 360. And that's part of what we're doing here today. We're trying to figure out what are the most important issues so that we could surface it up and then we could change the environment across UCLA so that it lifts, rising water lifts all boats. So hopefully this will make a difference with what we're doing here. So thank you again, first, to performance management team. We have one more group to present for working relationships. They had a really tough topic too. It was very vague, but they came up with a really creative solution. So I'd like for you to hear from them.
You have a clicker? You want to click? Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out here. There's so many people that are so engaged. It's a wonderful thing to see. I'm really struck by how much all of our topics are really additive. They're really all talking about how we communicate, how we interact with each other. So that's a great thing. Our topic obviously is working relationships. And I do want to publicly acknowledge everybody on our team. We have Eugene Acosta, Christina Etchinson, Patty Hayel, Maria Lebrano, Regina Mathis, myself, Ted Robles, Joko. How am I saying your last name, Joko? Satya. And Lucy saying, we had a really wonderful team, super engaged. They worked so hard. We could not have accomplished what we did if we didn't all work so well together. So we want to really publicly thank everybody. So our charge was to provide leadership with recommendations on what they can do to enhance staff working relationships at UCLA. So to answer this question, we started by looking at the survey that Luby talked about and to say, well, what exactly were the questions that they were using to identify what working relationships are? And you can see that those are the two questions. Some of you may have even filled these questions out and participated in the survey in 2017. And really it's looking at the relationships within departments and between departments. And if you look at the findings from these questions, Mullen? We have to have a good working relationship. Well, okay. There we go, right there. Okay, so if you look at the findings, they were really quite encouraging. UCLA had an overall favorable assessment, and when you compare that to other University of California campuses, and when you looked at the national norms, we really did come out fairly high. And next, there we go.
So if you look at working relationships, click it one more time, right there, it came in second only to, click it one more, there we go, our pride in the UCLA name, which we know a lot of people have a lot of great pride being here. So we decided what we really needed to do was perhaps reframe the question a bit and to ask, what is it that we can do to maintain or elevate the score that we currently have on the survey in our working relationships? So that then took us to the next step, which is to look at the data. We started to look at the literature, and as we dove into the literature, what we found is that managers, and this has been brought up by other groups, managers account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement. So basically what that means, and I think this has been mentioned with all of the other groups, right, is that the relationship that the manager has with the staff member is a very powerful influencer of employee engagement. And keep in mind that employee engagement is a feeling. It's how you feel about the work that you do and the place that you are. And so that relationship is a very powerful one. And we as a group thought, well, if it's such a powerful relationship, then we should be looking at it. And there's probably some really great managers. We all have had perhaps great managers. And we should find them and talk to them and find out what are they doing. And so the question then became, how do we find them? So what we did is we went to the UCLA staff picnic, all-staff picnic in August, and set up a booth and asked everybody one question. And that question is, do you know a UCLA supervisor and manager who fosters collaborative relationships among staff? And we asked 300 people answered the survey. We said, if you do, would you be willing to share the name of that person with us? And 300 people felt that they had a manager that they could call out as somebody who was a great manager. And our teams very painstakingly went through every single one, scrubbed that data and sifted through to make sure they really were managers at UCLA. Go back one, we're not ready yet. And we got 300, of those 300, we selected 24 managers that represented a variety of aspects of campus. And our team, either in person or by phone, interviewed each one of them. Okay. And this is what we asked them. We asked them about the first two questions that have really to do with best practices. So what are you doing to foster communication collaboration among the staff that are in your department? And then how are you doing that between departments? The third question we wanted to know, is there anything that's getting in the way of you fostering that kind of collaboration? And then 4, how can leadership better support you and make it easier for you to have collaboration? And so from those questions, we found there were some themes. So on the first one, what are you doing to collaborate? Well, you're ahead of me with that one. Okay, so the themes are, they tended to have regular inclusive meetings, and meetings where people felt that they could go and share their thoughts and their concerns and their ideas, and it was a safe place for them to talk about whatever they felt they wanted to talk about. So they had a culture of openness and trust that you alluded to earlier, this feeling that it's okay if I speak my mind and I'm going to be heard. I might not be agreed with, but I will be heard. Also, there are good relationships with other offices, and people tend to lead with positivity and kindness when it came to talking to other departments, expecting the best from people and giving people the benefit of the doubt. Some of the quotes that we pulled from this were, every quarter we have lunch with another unit just to get to know one another and explore potential collaborations, which I thought was a great idea. Another one was, if I want to collaborate with someone, I invite that person to lunch. At UCLA, we value busy, but you're never too busy to make that connection. And she dubbed herself the lady who lunches. So we thought that was a really great idea. The next one are obstacles. Some of the obstacles that tended to come up was the perception that leadership does not value collaboration. Other things in the university perhaps are valued, but it's not been articulated that this is something that's valued. Lack of time or opportunity for relationship building, and then this sense of competition between units is there's limited resources, so perhaps we don't really want to collaborate with other departments because then maybe there would be less for us. I see a couple of nodding heads there. Okay. Let's look at some of the quotes here. There is the obstacle of being overworked, which can decrease collaboration due to lack of time and energy. So how do we put that into our day when we already have so much to do? Another quote is, even though we're all UCLA, we're competing with each other, whether it's competing for classroom space or resources. And so that also kind of, goes into the idea that was brought up before of silos, right? So we're all one, but we're kind of separate in our own little worlds. So, and the last one was, what can great managers do? What can leadership do to support managers in their quest to enhance collaboration? Some of the themes we found there is make networking an expectation rather than an option. So this idea of relationship building sometimes is seen as a negative thing or something you just do so you can get to the next job, but actually there's inherent value in doing that just in our day-to-day work. So why not make that something that we expect? Promote collaboration as a campus-wide vision, that it's something that's articulated in our values and what we believe in. And third, leadership should model collaboration with each other. So if we saw it at a higher level, that was being role models, then that would be something that we can more easily emulate. So some of the quotes we got here were, can managers add networking and relationship building into job descriptions? So this is actually part of your job to meet people. And even if you're an introvert, don't worry. There's lots of ways to meet people. You don't have to go to parties and stuff like that. Leadership needs to collaborate more with each other and then share about what it is that they do. And then the last one, we need more initiative from leadership in creating opportunities for collaboration and then sharing the stories about how we do it. Just, learning from each other, well, how did you do it? And coming up with new ideas and new ways to do things. So as we looked at all these things, we looked at the survey data from 2017, we dove into the literature, and we talked to great managers at UCLA. And from there, our group came up with 3 recommendations for leadership, and Regina's going to share that.
Thank you. So when I first joined UCLA just over 12 years ago, the first thing my hiring manager said, it's going to take you about a year to get the lay of the land. Now, I came from a corporate background. You have like a week to hit the ground running. But what they said was, first of all, this place is huge, which I agree, but they also emphasized the importance of relationships and taking time to build relationships. So I actually think in some ways it's embedded in what we do in the organization. We have a couple of professional development programs, PDP and SEP. Networking is a huge part of those programs. In addition, when I talk to employees in general, it's about building relationships and the connections that people have built across the organization. So I think our employees operate under the generalization that relationships are important. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we actually want to encourage additional use of the wheel. It's like, how do we reinforce what's working? Because we did get strong numbers in the engagement survey. So our 3 recommendations are to help leadership maintain and strengthen staff working relationships. And the first one that you see here is really about clarifying expectations. What we know is that leadership expectations are where staff will follow. So if we set the expectation that teamwork is important, we want to actually surface that and promote that. Right now we have our 5 values, our Truger values. Are they listed there? I was going to quiz everybody. So it's go back. So it's RAISE, right? So it's respect, accountability, integrity, service, and excellence. Trust isn't listed there, is it? But it's actually the wind beneath all of that. It's actually what raises all of that up. But one of our recommendations is, can we actually add trust as a value? And then, of course, we realized there was an acronym and thought, okay, we might get shot down because there's a lot of marketing materials out there already. But that doesn't mean that we can't still weave it in. We really need to make sure that trust is recognized as a core element of achieving all of those values. So that's our first recommendation, So if it's not added as a 6th, that it's highlighted as an appropriate manner. Now, our second recommendation, has more to do with the actual collaboration, sharing the opportunities that exist. I said that people are already have strong working relationships. Collaboration is always going on, but why don't we know more about it? Those are the stories that we should be highlighting. If that's the culture that we're trying to have, we need to share those stories. So since survey responses were largely favorable in the categories, this suggests that there are real life examples that are out there to be shared. And managers and staff can actually be role models for the type of behavior that we're looking for. So instead, what we'd like to do is expand awareness of those positive interactions and encourage storytelling, because what we know is storytelling actually helps to shape the culture. So this recommendation, actually, if you bridge it to the first one, it helps to bring the values to life. Examples of collaboration could be embedded in your internal newsletters. It could be a part of department meetings, and we recommended when we presented to the senior leadership team that should be something that's on their agenda. What is a strong example of teamwork that's going on across the organization? But it's actually making a conscious commitment to have those conversations about it. And the last recommendation that we have is about actually offering some type of recognition for the relationships that, or the strong relationships that exist in the organization. Not just the relationships themselves, but the actual impact. So several managers mentioned the importance of acknowledging staff for their efforts and accomplishments in working collaboratively with teams. So we thought, let's have some type of formal program. Studies show that recognition is a significant driver of work motivation and employee engagement. And that 1 minute of recognition, recognizing behavior yields 100 minutes of initiative in return. Just that show of appreciation, that thank you. You see me, you see my contribution, you know what, I'm willing to do more. So we need to find ways as an organization to actually highlight that. Administration and other departments have recognition programs that already highlight some elements of collaboration, but we wanted to actually try to raise that to a higher level. And I'm actually pleased to say, as a result of our presentation, right away Staff Assembly followed up with us and said, you know what, we want to use the Kevin McCauley Outstanding Staff Award as an opportunity to do this. So this is one of the award programs that Staff Assembly will offer in their upcoming recognition event. But it's a chance for us to once again highlight teamwork, those connections. So it's not just about what the individual does, it's about what we're doing collectively. So I'm pleased to say that was a very quick outcome of the presentation. And now we'll also be looking for other departments to do more things like that and to raise it. So our recommendations are fairly simple. But once again, we weren't trying to create something that's new. The research in the Towers-Watson engagement survey actually showed that we fared favorably, and additional analysis of the research suggests that great managers can be a key to fostering strong working relationships. And I think you've heard that throughout all of these presentations. So it's really this high-level leadership and management that set the tone for positive staff collaboration, and we want to really give them opportunities to consciously do this. We think it happens unconsciously, but how do you make the conscious effort? So we highly recommend that leadership broadly acknowledge the importance of staff collaboration in the service of UCLA mission. Communicate with staff about opportunities for relationship building. So when's it happen? Creating teams that allow people opportunity to connect, sharing those great stories, and then last but not least, visibly recognizing and rewarding successful engagement in collaboration. And that's it. With 7 minutes to spare, what kind of questions you got? Oh. Does that mean we were so clear? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know, but we just launched, thankfully, Dean Kelsey Martin. We launched this initiative with the Cultural North Star, and it's got 3 pillars.
Yes.
Be kind,
fabulous.
Make things better, and do what's right. And then there's 4 sub-values under each one. So I think if you just probably Google Cultural North Star, I think the site is going live this week.
Right.
And there's a whole incentive where you can have a conversation with an employee you've been meaning to have, like a coworker, and then you can also submit someone who's done something right by you that is a coworker and things like that. So it's really, really exciting. I hope everyone checks it out. Maybe
Cultural North Star.
So like a guiding star for the School of Medicine.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I saw the launch, I think, yesterday. It's really a nice program, a values-based program. And I would say for anybody in here who is a supervisor or manager, really it's about putting this on your agenda. It's about making this part of your conversation and encouraging individuals to connect with each other. I think we do it individually. We'll wander off, we'll connect, but it's giving people that space to actually build those relationships that ensure that, you know, when the fire hits, when all of a sudden it's crazy, I'm not all of a sudden just introducing myself to my colleague. I already know them. We already have a relationship. We already have a support system in place.
I'm not sure if this is the last session today, but it seems like very important, and I'm curious how these 3 recommendations are informing all of the work that has been described today. It's trying to find ways to get best practices from these managers who have built trust or understands our common humanity, right? So I'm just curious as moving forward, or if in the past, if this task force is intersecting with the others to try to help provide a framework of how to approach training.
That's a really good question. I would say we were each on separate paths, but if you've noticed by our presentations, there's a natural connection between everything that we've been doing. So I think we're all at the stage right now of looking at, okay, what's next? How do we continue to keep this alive? I mean, fortunately, performance management ties very well to what we've been talking about. That's an opportunity for managers to have the conversations around teamwork being a value, right? So that's the kind of thing that I think we can integrate into our communication as we move forward. But I can't say we have a full game plan yet.
And I'm not sure, you know, structurally how these will all intersect, but thematically we were all connected under the auspices of employee engagement. And employee engagement, as I said before, it really comes down to people feeling valued and feeling seen and feeling heard. And I think that was the impetus for these task force in the first place, to look at what can we do. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be great right out of the gate, but I think that all these groups have put together some really thoughtful recommendations that get to the heart of that as this quote says from Gallup, that our organizations are really a collection of relationships, and how can we look at people as people and value them and see them in, you know, in ways like they're doing with the Cultural North Star. Yeah.
Well, in the interest of time, I'd like to thank everyone again for presenting, and I want to make sure we have time to give Kevin a chance to conclude for us. I think that actually points to where we're trying to go with this. This year, I took this on as immediate past president. I usually just have an advisory role as immediate past president for Staff Assembly, but I made sure that we started these task forces and they could start these recommendations. So Kevin's going to talk a little bit more about his next steps, because in a couple of months he'll be immediate past president and hopefully he'll carry the torch. So thank you, Kevin.
Can you click me? Perfect. Thank you, guys. So thank you all very much for coming. I think the fact that you guys are here and that many of you have been involved in these task forces says so much for the work ethic you have and the belief and I think investment that you guys have made in yourselves and also UCLA. So this cartoon, to end on a light note, is something that we've been showing a few times when we were talking about staff engagement, but it's kind of a funny paradigm I think that sometimes people run into. If you jump to the next slide, Juan. Thank you. So I think one of the questions was kind of what are the next steps? And I've heard a lot of, you know, excellent recommendations today, and I think our role as Staff Assembly, as leadership, you know, in leadership roles across the organization is to help everyone execute and actually implement what we've said. So there's different strategies, obviously. Some of these things I think will be bottom up and they're going to organically have to grow, and different managers and departments and divisions are going to, you know, start to adopt them. And other things are going to be top down, like Michael Beck's adoption of the people management training for all of the administrative managers and supervisors. This is a very high-level timeline. This town hall actually worked out almost perfectly because system-wide HR just confirmed that the 2019 survey is scheduled to be released next week. So I'm very pleased to say that we were able to have this conversation and allow all of our work to be presented. And next week the survey will be released. Again, it's a random sample that Willis Towers Watson controls, so it's completely anonymized. So some of you guys might get the survey, some of your colleagues might. Definitely encourage folks in your units to answer them because we'd love to see the progress in all of these areas. And then the best part is our work is not done. I think this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. And what I think I and Staff Assembly and many people across the organization like to see is that this becomes business as usual, that we continuously have this conversation and learn from what we're doing well and continue to spread it, and also learn about areas that we can improve in and help those areas do better in those regards. So after we distribute the survey, we're planning to continue to stay in touch with all of the task forces, finalize the reports, present it again to the Dean's Council and all of the Vice Chancellors, and again, taking kind of a bottom-up and top-down approach, making sure they're aware of everything you've recommended. In the fall, we will get the results back from the 2019 survey, likely share it with this group first so we can start to have the conversation again. And then in winter 2020, we'll reiterate this process and talk as a group. Do we want to focus on these areas again, or have we improved and are there other areas that we think are equally or more valuable to focus on next year? Next slide, Will. So this is the, some of you guys might be familiar with this, the lean plan, do, check, or study, act cycle of just continuous improvement. And I think this is where UCLA is going, is continuously analyzing ourselves and learning from our strengths and our opportunities. Next slide. So with that said, a couple short-term, I think, opportunities that I wanted to share with you guys. These are some things that Staff Assembly has going on right now that you guys can get involved in. And I think by the sheer fact that you're here, that you're interested in this topic, that many of you guys have invested time into these recommendations, I think any of these opportunities would be, I would be very, very pleased and enthralled to have you guys join. First, we have our scholarship and awards program that actually closes tomorrow. Regina mentioned the Kevin McCauley Outstanding Staff Award. If any of you guys work with any staff that you would like to acknowledge, definitely nominate them for that award. And even some of you in this room, if people you've worked with on these task forces, I highly encourage you to think about nominating one another as well. Virtual 5K is going on. This is part of our wellness initiative. And then a brand new program, the third one on the list there, is the Invest in You Summit. So Invest in UCLA, but also Invest in You as staff. That's actually been confirmed for June 18th. And that's going to be I think an annual summit that focuses specifically on professional and personal development, as well as trying to organize and collate a lot of the resources and tools that we have at UCLA that sometimes are just siloed and different groups are not aware of. So we hope to see you there, and also welcome your participation and ideas if you'd like to see any particular programming happen there. And then finally, our executive board is an annual term, and the nominations for that are going to be opening next week. So also many of you that have been involved, if you'd like to kick it up a notch and help execute and implement some of these things, I strongly encourage you to consider running for a board position and or nominating someone who you think would be a good fit for the board. And we have a couple events there coming up to talk with you if you have specific questions or want to learn more about Staff Assembly. Next slide one. Okay, so in conclusion, I just wanted to quickly also acknowledge our Administrator's Vice Chancellor, Michael Beck, who's probably one of our biggest advocates of Staff Assembly, AMG, and staff in general. He is always there and very, very interested in making our working environment better for everyone. So thank you for making the time to stop by today. And my concluding remark for everyone in the room is I challenge you before you leave, A, to grab a cookie, but B, to introduce yourself to someone new that you haven't met and learn something about them, where they're from, what department they work from, what they are having for dinner tonight, whatever piques your interest. But I think this is how we can actually do what we are talking about right now. So thank you all for coming.